What is up, everybody? How you doing tonight? Oh, wait, yeah, the bearded guy's here tonight. That's right. Omar is had an emergency to do tonight, so we're kind of switching things up a little bit. So thank you guys for being here. As always, thank you for showing up. This is our 1 hour podcast of Get in the Game. The co-host tonight's a little different as well. You might remember him from the Monday night shows, Ed Wallach. How are we doing tonight,
how's
Ed?
everybody doing? Thanks
Doing
for
good.
thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm happy to. This is going to be a cool topic. Ricardo Hicks is going to be walking us through some of how he switched to virtual, how that pivot happened, and how he was able to take his team of freelancers with him. So, you know, super excited for this. If you haven't gotten into the game of virtual tonight, we're going to talk about how you get into that game of virtual. So, with that, let's bring Ricardo in. How you doing, Ricardo?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
So you are the owner of the Tech Factory, is that correct?
Yes, sir. A Tech Factory. 2 years and some change now. Of course, we used to do live events. Hopefully, we get back to that soon and made a transition to virtual.
Great. And excuse me, what was that transition like? So when you say you transitioned, what exactly does that mean?
Well, just like most people, the books were looking good for the year, and we actually had a busy summer that we were heading into. And I must say, I was in the middle of an event in Richmond when everything got shut down. We actually went 2 days out of 4, or 1.5 out of 4. And the calls started coming in while I was literally breaking down that event to make cancellations, and it was tough. It was a tough time. And then the next month ensued, and then phone calls continued to come in, and it was just like it was a big hit to take. And during that time, I just decided just to take a step back, spend some time with my family, pray. And just focus on some things around the house that needed to get done. And my video engineer and I had been talking probably 2 weeks prior to getting a text message. My video engineer, Damon McNeil, he's out of Richmond, Virginia. He's a permalancer for me for the most part. Great engineer. And we've been talking about doing virtual and exploring what that was going to look like. So we started talking about it, and after about 2 weeks of us exploring some things, I got a text message out of the blue, and it was a client that I hadn't talked to in 4 years. And she asked if I knew anything about virtual, and that was a Friday. We scheduled a call for Monday, and things started from there.
You spent the weekend, I'm sure, learning as much as you could, right?
Well, if I'm being honest with you, I honestly thought text message after 4 years, not hearing from this client for so long, that it was just like, hey, how can I help with a webinar? Something pretty basic. So I was preparing for that, and then something told me, let me bring my video engineer Damon onto this call with me, just in case.
Right.
And what I thought was going to be a basic, let me help you, with a webinar or something as a favor, turned into a 13 webinar series.
Wow.
And talk about opportunity and preparation, and having a positive attitude and trying to think forward. Of course, when I got off that call, I called Damon quickly, and we celebrated for a moment, and we were like, okay, we have some work to do. So it was a great opportunity. Like I said, it was the opposite of the feeling that I had for the month and a half. It was like, okay, here's a glimmer of hope.
Right. No, that's amazing. That's the kind of story that you like to hear, because there's so many people out there in the AV industry right now who haven't had much work. And it's, I don't, to me personally, at least, I don't feel sour grapes when I hear that somebody got some work. I think that's awesome. And it's just, as you said, a shimmer of hope for the rest of the industry that it's not all lost, and something good will come of it. So that's great. A 13 webinar series, that must have felt good at a time when it looked like things were getting kind of grim. Especially, when was that? Was that, I guess, maybe mid-March, beginning
It was
April, kind
April.
of?
It was April, and I will say, the webinar, it was pretty straightforward, which was good because we didn't know much, so we needed it to be very straightforward. But we learned a lot: bandwidth, CPU, GPU, what we didn't know, we discovered quickly. So we started diving in, into just those core principles. I have this saying that I take with me. It's about the craft, the colleague, and the client. And once you have those things in harmony, and you take all of those things seriously in your career, you can be prepared to take on any task. So we had to start from the ground and learn things that we knew nothing about. So we got in there, learned the terms, the ins and outs. And one thing about my style of AV and everybody that I work with, that I bring on to my team, it's wonderful. When you learn how to do something, it's great. It's like good, it works. But I like to learn how to break it. Like, what makes it not work? So I need to understand the how and the why. And once you get into those things, you're getting into the craft, like, understanding understanding it on a level that's deeper than, okay, push this fader and this sounds like this. So we had to get into those types of things.
That's awesome. Yeah, you took something and you turned it into a learning moment where instead of, you could have just been like, all right, guys, we're kind of done, until something opens up. You realize there was a need to evolve your skill set and move forward with it. That's awesome. That's
absolutely
really amazing, especially in a time like, as most of everybody knows, I'm kind of like the IT engineer networking background guy for the most part.
Nice.
And that's where my expertise actually got me in the AV field, is because at a time when everything was going virtual, like you said, you had to learn CPUs, GPUs, all those kinds of things that weren't thought of as an audiovisual thing in the past, where it's like, it's more important now that we know these things, because we have to make sure that we have machines that can run these virtualized meetings and virtualized events and be able to handle it. And it was like I kept getting call after call. Omar's my brother. Everybody knows that. There's no hidden agenda behind that. But it was like I kept getting phone calls. He's like, will this work? Will this work? Will this work? I'm like, no, you need this. No, you need that. And then it, helping Ed select a PC for VMix, and it's turned into a great thing for me. I enjoy all of it, and then what I'm learning from all of you guys coming in, and able to share my knowledge with it. It's amazing how quickly the team around you wants to keep evolving and keep moving forward.
So, I guess talking about learning, what kind of things did you learn? That learning curve, I'm sure, coming from a production world, isn't super steep, but what were maybe some of the pitfalls that you fell into and lessons you learned when you're climbing out of those pitfalls?
Oh, there's several. But I do want to, Chris, it's great to know that you have that experience. We need to talk offline so that I can pick up some things from you. But one of the great things that I learned by accident, just by talking to a computer professional. I was going in to buy some RAM. It struck up a conversation. I'm always talking to people, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to strengthen in the areas that I'm weak. So I'm talking to him. We were talking about, I can't remember what we were talking about exactly, but I was, processing computers, whatnot. And he gave me a tip that resonated with me, and that I tell even clients to this day, that Excel is the devil when it comes to CPU processing. So what people think is a bad internet connection, or what I call them phantom internet connections. No, that's Excel spreadsheet you have open. And when he broke it down to me, he said, those are active cells. Every cell is active, so it's calculating. So that's what a CPU does. So that was one of the best tips that wasn't even an AV tip, that helped me to diagnose some things and help figure some things out. But I would say one of the biggest pitfalls was in the beginning. We ended up with after that 13 webinar series, we ended up with a project that was a little more robust and a little more involved. And we had to step up And one of the mistakes that we made was bogging down a computer to do the workload of what 3 machines should have been doing. But I didn't know. It's like, okay, this is a high-end computer. You know, we're going to do 5 callers. We're going to, run PowerPoint. We're going to play back video. We're going to do all of this. It's going to be great. No, it was a disaster. And what it caused me to do was to really lose a lot of sleep and get a couple of extra gray hairs and thinking how to re-engineer a better workflow. So I spent a lot of time reading, studying, staying up late. I literally would get up out of bed, go to bed at 10 o'clock and wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning with the idea, oh, it didn't work because this happened. So I'd come upstairs, plug up a couple of computers, and it's like, that's what it was. And, I'll go back to sleep, wake up the next morning. And so it was a lot of that. But once I started re-engineering the workflow and understanding, what type of capture cards I might need, what a capture card is, some of these dongles, like which ones work with VMix, which ones work with OBS Studio. Never buy a knockoff capture card ever for anything, ever. I learned that because I bought them trying to save a buck. It's like, for me, I had I have a warehouse, a brick and mortar with gear, hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. Fortunately for me, I don't have much overhead because it's cash, but still, you have the lease, you have the insurance, you have all of those things. And so I was penny pinching, but I quickly learned that you can't do that if you want to do this the right way. So I had to spend time. I don't want to go too long, but we can pick this back up. But I want to make sure I segment this. But I had to make sure that I purchased the right products. So I started asking around, snooping around. If I knew somebody did an event with somebody else, I'm like, what did you all use for you all's event? I started asking those questions, and I was using OBS, which was great. And then I found out about VMix, and it really changed the game because, it really changed the game. I can explain that a little bit later.
So we do have a couple of questions coming in. Our sponsor for our Monday night event that we do here, the AV Tech Talks DVE store, is asking, are you using VMix, and if so, how?
Yes. So I am using VMix, and I'm using it in a couple of different ways. I'm using it as an encoder. I just haven't, the Black Magic products, great. But I know when I engineered the workflow, I knew that I needed to do it this way, and then I needed to duplicate it in, a few times over. So I use VMix. I have probably 15 VMix licenses. Wow. 8, 9 of them are basics, but other ones are at least 4 callers and up, probably, so, and it was because I had 3 events going on at one time, or, if you have 3 events going on one time, you have to build those systems. And then not only that, I need technicians to be able to build the show while I have another show going on. So it was a need for it. So I use it to encode. I also do this workflow where I have a Zoom within a Zoom. So I do use VMix callers, but I also use VMix meetings. And I'll have my panelists and presenters coming from that side. I will ingest that into VMix, add my graphics layers, do whatever, with lower thirds and such, and push that back into a Zoom webinar potentially, or into a WebEx, into a webinar and Vimeo. So I use it a few different ways.
That's great. I mean, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of the same kind of uses for VMix, and a lot of, doing those things, integrating Zoom into it, maybe sometimes taking your max VMix callers and then bringing in other sources. So I'm sure you're using a lot of NDI when you're doing stuff like that, and really leveraging the technology.
Well, I have to tell you, so NDI, I just started using NDI, to be honest with you. I knew about it, but again, I'd already engineered a workflow that I knew was I could, maybe I could pull up a diagram and even show it. But the diagrams are crazy. And it was because I was using capture cards and wasn't using NDI, but I knew it worked. I knew I needed to research NDI so I could understand it before I just started using it on a show. So I was slow. So actually I had an event. I never scheduled myself as a technician on the event. I put my core guys on, let them do the thing. I may TD, I may look over their shoulder and say, hey, check this out, check that out. But one day we had an event and I said, okay, let me do a deep dive into NDI. And I did that. I talked to a friend of mine, Chris Gentry, who gave me a couple of tips about it, and I jumped into it. And I think within a few days, I started using it on events. So it's been great. It's been an eye opener. It's not a fix all. I thought when I first discovered it, I was like, oh man, no more capture cards ever. And I said, bandwidth restrictions, not so much.
It's definitely got
so I had to slow down there a little bit.
It's definitely got its powerful uses, but it does have some short-term limitations with it when it comes to things like that. Another question, not really a question, more of a statement from our own AV Educate here. So you learned from your failures and improved your processes, is what you were talking about, finding out CPUs and GPUs and how much they can handle and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I tell you it was a fail, it was a fail on a client that I'd been wanting for years. And I got the client. We've done some, and this was my first event with them, and it was a colossal fail. But it was a blessing because they didn't lose faith in me. They knew my track record coming in, and I have since done probably 20 events with them alone since that failure. And I'm constantly, proving, okay, listen, this was a one-time fail this way. This will never happen again. It's just unfortunate it happened with this client, but it was a blessing that it was to be able to fail on a client like that understood that things happen in business, and that goes to that work ethic, that reputation. I've always prided myself on walking in and out of the room the same way every time, and no matter what job I do, whether I'm getting paid 30% of what I would charge or it's rack rate. Treating every job the same. And I promise you that work ethic pays off. It's not a short route to success, but if you carry yourself in that manner, like, respecting your client, your craft, and the people you work with, it pays off. It pays off dearly. It's just not a short game. It's a lifestyle.
So one of the things you did is you said you took a company of your core people that you had employed and working with you at the time, and you brought them and taught them how to be freelancers. What would something you would give advice to somebody who, say, is working in another type of industry, trying to move into the AV industry? How would you recommend they get set up with being a freelancer and things like that?
Wow. It's different now. A little bit different, but I would say it definitely starts with that customer service piece. Customer service is more important now than it was when we were doing live, because you don't get the makeup for failures in the virtual space as much as you. When something goes wrong, awry on a live event, somebody comes on stage, say you were having technical difficulties, give us a second, and people understand because it happens in live events. With virtual, it's not as forgiving. So my point is with that is you want to learn as much about computers, IT, codecs, why you need to firmware, software, making sure those things are up to date, how things communicate, with the computer, from virtual patches, so we're used to patching cables in a physical environment. How do these virtual patches work, communicating from platform to platform, whether it's NDI, virtual cameras with VMix and OBS Studio, virtual cables with VB cables and such. You're gonna have to really get on that technology. Oh yeah, I see this comment too. Oh, very much so. Bit rates and compression. So that's one of the biggest things that I've had to talk to clients about, even with Zoom, is like understanding, like, if you don't have a proper lighting, proper lighting and camera, you can expect Zoom to look good at all, because it's squeezing, that pipeline is squeezing. I have a way to explain that to clients so that they understand it. But but the Zoom room has definitely changed, is changing the game for me in the last month. So I've definitely gotten into the Zoom rooms to get you up to 720 and then eventually 1080p.
Yeah, Zoom rooms are great. Great to have. Very useful tools. For just what you said, bumping up that resolution, and starting your meetings that way. Or if you're actually operating using the Zoom room, you get a couple extra views on it, and you can do more window captures. So yeah, no, Zoom rooms are excellent.
Absolutely. Yeah. I learned
Now,
about that with from a guy named Grant out of Australia. He was talking
oh,
about Zoom room.
I know Grant from office hours. Yeah,
So you joining off office hours as well? Okay.
I do. I do.
He
Okay,
is
cool.
absolutely a regular.
Yeah. So I
Nice.
So
haven't been there a lot lately because I've been working a bit
yeah.
more during that time frame. But yeah, no, I
Nice.
definitely. Yeah,
So
no, that's
again,
great.
guys, we're here with Ricardo. He's from the Tech Factory. He also has a website, Tech Factory Productions, that you can go check out and see everything that he's got going on and everything there. We do have another question from our very own AV Educate asking, how do you like using NDI, pros and cons for your workflow? I kind of feel like we kind of went into that a little bit, but maybe you can
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit more on it.
Yeah. So I use NDI for, pretty much for me, just PowerPoint. I'll do some video playback, and I'm going to start experimenting with it with lower thirds, coming out of After Effects. So I'm working with my graphics guy on that. So it's really cool, that you can come straight out of After Effects and straight out of Premiere, without rendering into VMix. So that's something that I will be exploring here. I've started exploring over the last week, and I'll be implementing it into events in the next couple of weeks or so. But yeah, so cons, I would say, I'm nervous about the communication. What happens when it doesn't? There's no handshake. What causes it not to show up? And those are some of the things that I'm working on now to get an understanding on. And I'll be talking to people like Chris to make sure that I have my ports set up properly, and multicast checked, and so on and so forth, and my router, buying the right router to be able to do, the right switch to be able to do the job, sort of things like that.
Yeah, that's always a concern. Have you encountered the Hulk screen yet with NDI?
Yeah. You know what? I think I saw it with Guy earlier today on office post show office hours. Talk to me about that Hulk screen. Why does it happen?
So, I mean, there's a bunch of speculation as to why it happens. And for anybody who doesn't know, sometimes with NDI, what you end up when you're using like a virtual camera, you end up with your screen turning green and purple, which is why it's called Hulk screen. Everybody turns green. It looks like Hulk bad. To me, it looks like a color space issue. Like back when you would plug into a DVI with an HDMI adapter, to DVI, and you'd get the wrong color space. That was like a real common, the green and purple screen. So, and a lot of times the fix to it is just stopping and restarting the camera that you're using, the virtual camera, and it comes back fine. So it's one of those things. But when you see it, and I've heard a lot of people talking about how when they're using something on the same machine they're using VMix with, and using NDI to virtually send that from within the same machine, they get it more often than other times. So. But the first time you see it, you're like, "What's that? Why is everything green and purple?"
So they were talking about it post show, and then it actually happened, and I was like, "Oh, that's what they're talking about." Because I was going to ask, and then when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, I get it now."
Yeah, exactly. So when we were talking before the show, you mentioned that you have a core group of freelancers and people that you work with. And you also mentioned that you've been grooming people to improve their skills for around the last 11, 12 years, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly. So,
can you talk about that process of training people and the importance of bringing your team with you?
Yeah, so it's very important, especially so I've worked for a couple of companies. Started my career with PSAV. So I had a hotel property on a New Haven Port. I was always prided myself on customer service, so I wanted to make sure that the customer service experience was, you know, consistent. You know, and I felt like that I can train and teach people how to do the technical piece. If they know how to smile, treat people properly, you know, interact with people the right way, I feel like I can teach. I've had some tough projects, and they've worked out pretty good. You know, everybody, you know, has their specialties and whatnot, and everybody has their process. But, you know, it's just about you know, identifying, you know, that friendliness, that customer service piece, and then finding out, you know, there's a lot to do in AV. You know, audio, video, lighting. You know, you even have content creation, and you know, there's so many different avenues that you can travel down. And then you want to, you know, give them a sample of a little bit of everything and figure out where, you know, that may land. And I'm really good at putting teams together. And so, you know, I started doing that with PSAV when I was in hotel properties, and then I worked for a couple of companies doing outside sales. And again, I wanted to shape that experience for my clients to make sure that they were getting a great experience. If I felt like the team members on you know, that we had were stretched thin, and we didn't, you know, maybe we didn't have the culture, camaraderie, and training that I thought we should have, I felt like, you know what, I'm going to build a team that I want to represent on these certain with these certain clients, and it worked because there was a certain consistency that was there when we showed up to do the job. And, you know, and that's a process. It takes time, and you have to break people down to understand, you know, it's great. You know how to turn a projector on, you know how to keystone, but can we get beyond those two things to understand, you know, a greater portion of what it takes to do projection? Like, why do you have to keystone? Like, what is the distance? How do you calculate distance? You know, before you go to set up a projector, instead of sliding it 16 feet, you know, just to guess how it's going to fill the screen. How do you know before you even set up the projector to put yourself in that range? So same thing with audio. I'm an audio specialist. You know, so you know, I start a lot of guys with audio. But you apply those same principles. You know, it took me a while. Lighting was always my weakest thing to do. So it's something that I still constantly work on. And I think it's probably the weakest for most anybody. You find a good lighting guy, you better latch onto him and not let him go. But yeah, I mean, no matter what area it is, you just have to go back to the basic set of terms. You know, we were talking about the nomenclature. What are the terms that, you know, and then I like to understand how to build something, why it works, how it works, how to break it, how to fix it. And you want guys that appreciate and love that process, no matter how painful it is. So once you find those guys, I mean, and I found those guys when I was doing live events, it was like, you know what? We're just going to apply those same rules to virtual events. And only thing is just started pretty much with me and my guy Damon, you know, kind of leading the charge. And then, you know, making sure that I'm putting the information in front of them, you know, read this, study this, check this out. And this is why this didn't work. And something happens on the event, on the day of the event. Okay, this didn't work because of this. I'm breaking that down there, right then and now.
So the perfect segue into a couple of questions we had, being that you started audio. One of the questions is, how are you dealing with audio in your workflow?
Well, how I want to deal with it is I want to find a Dante card for my Midas 32C and my Midas 32R. So if someone can help me find that would be great. But no, right now I'm looking at. I haven't done it yet, but I'm looking at splitting that up between two VMix machines. I'm working on that workflow now with the mix minuses and the bus, and you know, it's a pretty robust product, very robust product, VMix. So I'm gonna take the time between December 20th is my last event and January 2nd. So I have a gap between there that I'm gonna work that workflow out, and you know, somewhere in between there, you know, I'm not gonna use it on January 2nd, don't worry, but I'm going to work out the engineering, bring some of the team in, and let them see how this is going to work. So that's how I'm going to deal with it. But right now, we're dealing with it the best we can, making sure we're checking those buses, understanding where the mix minus is, what's this is happening here, this is happening there. It can get kind of tricky, especially when you're doing that zone within a zone thing. And I actually went with that zone within a zone. I'm also doing a mix. I have a contrived mix minus that I do, so I can actually talk to the presenter without the audience in the other webinar hearing, but it's just how I'm using it. I have to use VMix on the same machine that I'm using the Zoom, and speaker output, you had to think that through. And I was like, okay, this is my little fake comm system, but it works.
Yeah, that is one of the tricks of dealing with VMix, which is an all in the box kind of solution. And then when you want to use other things, it's almost like with what's the term? With convenience comes complexity. So you have the convenience of being able to do a lot of things with VMix, but it also gets very complex, and gets very easy to get lost in it sometimes. I'm currently working with one of my clients that they just brought me into the studio the other day, and they've brought in the QL5, and I said, all right, let's Dante this, and let's put virtual sound card on the VMix machine, and then I can help the VMix operator, take some of that load off. Of course, then there's still some things that have to be done on the VMix side.
Absolutely.
So separate audio controllers helps with that. And then give that to the audio guy and give him a display so he can see the audio mixer within VMix and try to help, because it does get to be a lot. You mentioned earlier, in the live space, some of the things we're doing with VMix would be 3-4 operators on dedicated hardware that only does one thing. So it's the virtual world. I mean, are you experiencing that it's operators? Are you finding that you have more? They're using more labor or less labor? What are you seeing on your events?
For me, I'm padding my labor. I'm adding extra labor because of the training, So I'm making sure I have those an extra body, and then I'm taking myself away from the operating. But to your point, you can get lost in VMix real quick. But diagrams, and then I like to make sure, if I have, that I'm usually for an event that has that workflow that I'm describing, I'm going to have 3 guys, and sometimes I like to put one of the guys in the driver's seat for a little bit of the segment so that they can take a little bit of that heat. But also I'm breaking up. So if I'm having my VMix operator, I'm not having him talking on the microphone, talking to talent. I'm going to have somebody sitting beside him that's running PowerPoints to be able to talk. Or, then you also need people, especially if you're using Zoom, you need someone that's pinning people on screens. You need somebody that's chatting. So there's a lot to do. And if you try to do it with one person, you won't do a whole lot, and then you won't do a whole lot well at all, because it's just too much to keep up with once you start doing large events. Now, if you're doing something small that has a workflow like that, maybe you can get away with it. But we're doing a lot of large events, so I want to make sure that I have those extra bodies there. So I'm adding extra bodies, and I'm doing that training ongoing. Any of my guys will be able to tell you that a couple of them are probably watching. So I preach that, let's understand what happened, and let's understand it. Let's try to understand it now. Let's talk through it.
So at this time, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. So one of the things you mentioned earlier, with that specific event that you had a failure on, the client, you said they were willing to take you on. You did 20 more events with them. Are you finding that the clients are kind of more understanding in this virtual space, and there's no, you're not. Interesting. Okay. No. I'm kind of finding, some people are understanding that. I feel like some of the events I've been working, at least, we're able to get away with certain things. Like, people understand, oh, well, not everyone's internet is great. And
that part, yes.
There's understanding on some of the technical aspects of it, where in a live event that wouldn't fly. If somebody went off screen, their iMac went off screen for 3 seconds, that wouldn't fly. But you can say, oh, well, they dropped internet. I'm sorry. Nothing really you can do about that. So, but you're not finding any reprieve from clients.
Well, I'll take that back. So yeah, it's a percentage, right? So the people that are forgiving, they're very forgiving, right? Very understanding. The people that don't understand, it's like, what happened? And you're going to have to answer to everything that happened. And it's like, okay, we're going to have to tell them, like, okay, we left our mic unmuted. This happened or that happened. If it's bandwidth on our side, it's not. But, that's another thing, understanding the terms of, I've caught my technicians actually saying things on comm or backstage. Is like, let us check our bandwidth. No, we don't need to check our bandwidth. We did a speed test. We know what we have. No, don't say that. You be very careful in the words that we're going to be honest, but don't use too many words. Don't use too few, but if you don't know the language, you don't know the words to use in the first place, then, you need to shut up and, you need to sit over there. But no, I'm being funny, but it goes back to what I was saying earlier, the set of terms. Once you have a command of the set of terms, you don't have to use all the terms. You can use few words. When I get on, when I talk to people, I want to talk to clients to the level that they're even comfortable. Like, if you want me to use the technical terminology, I'm going to use it. And once I go there, I'm going to use it heavily. But if I don't need to do that, and I can explain this in a more effective way that makes you feel comfortable, but also let you know that I know what I'm doing, then we're going to do that. But if you don't understand what you should be talking about in the first place, then you're just going to have a problem, and you're going to make everybody uncomfortable.
Right.
It's that elusive. Can you add this real quick? Let me check on that. No, I can't add it. That's what. So
yeah, one of the things I do a lot of freelance work, and whenever a client asks me something directly, whether it's, is it possible to add this or that? My kind of default answer almost is always, you know what? Let me check on that. Let me see how we're set up and if that's something we can do. And then as soon as I get an opportunity, I go to the PM of the show and I say, hey, this is what the client's asked for. But I don't know what conversations the sales guys had. Did this client nickel and dime over something? Yeah. Did, is it something that was already discussed in the pre-show and they said, no, we don't want to do that, and it's going to be an upcharge? I'm not going to be the guy who says, oh yeah, we can do that just by me doing this. Boom, done. And I just gave away, a ton of stuff that was negotiated earlier in the process. So those kinds of things, those skills of interpreting the situation and not giving away too much, are very valuable to have as a tech. It's those soft skills, kind of like what you talked about earlier with customer service. I always feel like AV is interesting. I always feel like AV is really a hospitality business and a customer service business, first and foremost. The technical stuff, that's important, but the whole customer service aspect of it is crucial for retaining business. I mean, Absolutely. Is that something you feel?
I agree. And I'm a Southern guy, so it's yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. And I have a tech now that the ladies love him to come on and say yes ma'am and no ma'am, and you must be from the South. So but that friendliness goes a long way, especially when it's sincere. So you have to be careful with that in this day and age. Some people don't like it, but the sincerity sells. That you really want to do a good job. You want to do the right thing for the customer.
Right. Now, one of the things we've kind of been talking about, the understanding the language. Now, you mentioned when we spoke briefly before the show, learning the craft, and you had a 3-point sentence that you mentioned. Can you refresh my memory what that was?
The client, the craft, and the colleague.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So coming in, I want to make sure that you're a person that can understand how to respect the people that you work with. You're going to talk to people the right way. That's all about culture, building an environment that, you can be vulnerable. You can go to your colleague and say, I don't know how to do this. Can you help me with this? That's very, very, very important, for anybody that works with Tech Factory. So, and I believe that's something that you carry with you wherever you go. I've always prided myself on going into a room when I was freelancing AV. I didn't tell everybody everything I know. As we all know, it can be a very big pissing match when it comes to AV technicians coming in the room. And, you talk about this I've done, I work on this console, I've done this, my position has always been to shut up, and like, I'll learn from you. Tell me everything that you've done, and I'll if you ask me what I've done, I might tell you, but I'm not going to make a contest out of it. But that's really important, is to be able to breaking those barriers to say, I don't know how to do this. How do I do this? And so that's very important in Tech Factory, because it's a level playing field. We need each other to make this happen. So that's your colleague, and understanding that. And then, of course, the craft speaks for itself. It's the things that we've been talking about earlier. About understanding the language. What is the difference between a balanced and an unbalanced cable? I guarantee you, there are not a whole lot of AV professionals that can articulate the difference between a balanced and an unbalanced cable.
How much time you got?
Right, I know you two can, and we don't even have to get into it. But it's not difficult math. It's actually very basic especially when you see somebody draw it out. But those basic things, building off of those foundational things, it's not something you have to brag about or show off. But if you understand that, you can understand, it's like, I have a buzz. Why am I getting this buzz? There could be a couple of different things. And it's like, I'm using an unbalanced cable, and I'm traveling, I'm trying to make it 75 feet, traveling parallel to power cable. You're going to have a problem. Yeah. So understanding those things and respecting the craft enough to know, okay, I can plug these cables up and they can work. But when there's a problem with it, you don't have terminology, you don't have, anything to call upon to understand how to fix it. So I feel like, if you're coming into AV, you have to, that takes care of colleague and craft, and then the client, you respect the client, and I always make sure that I respect the client, but I hold all of those in harmony, because I've actually had a client that wasn't treating my team right. And because that client wasn't treating my team right, I can think of it 4 years ago. I can tell you the name of the client. And I emailed the CEO and told him how disrespectful his project manager was, and how I was not happy with the way that he was talking to me and my team. And the CEO called me of this large company and apologized. He apologized, and I was so shocked. I wasn't even expecting a response, but at least I was going to say something to stick up for my team. You're not going to talk to my guys this way, because we worked too hard. We respected you. And, just because something went wrong, you're not going to treat us any kind of way. So I hold those all in harmony. So as tough as I can be on my guys sometimes, they know that, it's a level playing field for everybody. And we just want to do this right. And we want to respect everybody, respect, the craft that we're doing, and really own it.
That's awesome. Great. No, yeah, I'm going to jot that down, because that's just great. The craft, the client, and the colleague. That's
absolutely. So we've got about 15 minutes left to kind of wrap stuff up. We're going to kind of go through some of the questions that have come in. It's all great information. I mean, awesome information. So I feel you touched on this one a little bit, but how are you dealing with communication with remote techs? What's been your favorite to use? Or are you using remote techs, or is it all you're in an area doing it together?
So I'm in my little command center right here now, but I do remote text, and of course I make sure that bandwidth, make sure that they have the proper bandwidth. Speedtest.net. I want you to tell me what those results are, and maybe show me. And I may want you to check it a couple of times, but yeah. So if it's a breakout room situation where I have a gen session, I have breakouts, and it happens where I have 8 or 9 breakouts, and I may have, it's popular where I'll have one guy, similar to live events, where you have, my rule of thumb is one person per every 3 breakout rooms to kind of, check in, pop in. Same rule for virtual. I like to have one for every 3, go in, greet people, make sure they understand what's happening. I'll pop in again in another 30 minutes or so. So I've used remote guys that actually have had rented space where I've had command center for gen session, and I had another space where I had a team of 5 guys all together doing the breakout rooms. But I needed them together because it was 100 sessions. So that they had to start videos, play them back, so we use VMix for those. So I've used a VMix basic with 4 inputs. There's just press and play, playbacks and breakouts, and maybe helping unmute some people and whatnot. I think that answers the question.
Okay, excellent. Question that came up is, do you stream in 4K to YouTube using the paid version of VMix? If so, what are the benefits to you?
No, I haven't streamed 4K to YouTube yet. I've done 720 and 1080, but haven't done any 4K streaming as of yet. That's a good amount of bandwidth right there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff you would want to be maybe doing, cloud production on AWS if you had to do that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And definitely if you send in multiple places, you want to be using a Restream Restream account. Restream has definitely been my friend for events.
Nice.
We'll kind of bundle these couple together because they all go with the same thing. So this one says, can you give rough projection of how you evaluate job costs and factors you take into consideration? And as a freelancer, do you rent equipment or purchase equipment to facilitate vendors' needs? And how do you weigh the cost? I believe you said earlier you own most of the equipment that you're using on shows. Yeah. But in any event, it's how would you job cost that into the event for the client?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've kind of bootstrapped it. Just okay. I know I need this to do this job. Everything. Most of what I've gotten so far has been word of mouth. 80% of it. So I've been thrown jobs with like a month's notice, and it's like, okay, I have 2 jobs that are happening this 3-day period. I need to build another system. So if it's a $15,000 job, I may need to spend $10,000, and I just know that, I'm going to have 2 jobs going on at the same time again. So I just need to chalk this up to, I'm buying $10,000 worth of equipment and I'm breaking even maybe, or may even lose money. But, so I kind of see the bigger picture. I have a little foresight, so I can see kind of how things are moving and trending. So I will go ahead and pull the trigger on, I may have bought too many VMix license, when I say 15, it sounds crazy, but a lot of them are VMix basic, so they do what I need to do for the breakout room. So it may not be as crazy. But when you think about it in relationship to OBS Studio, it's higher learning curve on OBS Studio, right? VMix is, kind of plug and play on a lot of the basic stuff. You can just walk somebody through it over the phone. OBS Studio is faster, but you may not be able to walk somebody through it over the phone, so much. So, so to answer the question, I'll look at it and see how fast I think I can use it, how soon I can use it again. So if I need to eat all of that to get a job done, and I know I'm going to have future jobs, I'm going to go ahead and buy more equipment, because equipment is everything. My warehouse full of live event gear does me no good. Most of it does me no good. And it's probably going to be a while before we get to a lot of consistent hybrid events, maybe another 6 months. So it's going to be a while.
That leads me to 2 quick questions. So with all those VMix licenses, and you got some remote guys, are you having them do things like Team Viewer into your machines and operate from home, or
that's next?
How are you? That's next. Okay.
That's next. So of course I've been hanging out with the office hours guys. So I'm looking at Team Viewer and such. I've heard that there are Pitfalls and many of these different remote in sources, but I'm familiar with Team Viewer. I think most people are. So I'm looking at Team Viewer to try to exploit it a little bit so people can get familiar with it, because I'm going to get some AWS instances as well.
Oh, great.
To be able to run something. That's another exploration over the next month and a half, 2 months. Been talking to Tucker, so Tucker.
Yeah. I'll have to introduce you to Jeff Keithley if you don't already know him.
Jeff Keithley. No, I heard his name several times. You're like the 4th person that said I need to talk to him.
Yeah. We'll get you involved. And if you're an audio guy and you're looking at remote stuff, make sure you tune into AV Tech Talks next week, because we're looking at how to control Yamaha consoles over the internet from
Nice.
using one console to control another. So all that remote stuff is so cool that we have
Absolutely.
these capabilities these days. But the second thing I was going to ask, so you mentioned you have a warehouse full of gear. What I guess I see this with a few companies that I work for, that they didn't decide, they went with VMix machines and didn't decide to say, all right, you know what, let's set up the E2 in the shop. Let's set up a bunch of Playback Pro machines. We'll bring in an audio guy and run the audio console, and we'll do it like a live production in the studio. In the shop, we'll build these things out. Now, is that what was the factors in making those decisions to invest in the, as you're saying, you might invest 10 grand to get a VMix machine and the backbone of the infrastructure set up. So how do you make those decisions instead of using the gear you have and maybe have to bring in more labor to build these machines out to do the shows that you got going on?
For me, it was easy because I had to make that decision because for the larger, more robust live events, if I needed a big switcher, I would rent that switcher. So if I needed an analog way of sender, that's what I would just need to rent that. But I was using Blackmagic products, for even decent sized events, actually 4,000 and 5,000 attendee events, because I had the aux output and they're solid. Even Alex was saying he hasn't seen Blackmagic products crash. I haven't either. But they don't come with a bunch of user manuals either. So you have to definitely work with it. So Alex
is one of the luckiest guys on the planet, though, too, apparently, because there's so many things he's like, oh yeah, I've never had a problem with that.
Right. It's not everybody's case, right? So, yeah. But to your point, though, I am, I've almost clicked, even today, like, let me go ahead and buy this Blackmagic 4K ME. So I can go ahead and have the 4 layers, and then I can bring that. So what I'm doing is, because I actually already bought the router, so I'm actually starting to go back to hardware. So that's why I was saying earlier, I think it was before we started, NDI is not the end all be all. It's just going to be helpful to use, but I'm going to more hardware based solutions. Like I said, I'm waiting on the card. I've been wanting the Midas card ever since COVID hit, but everybody scooped them all up. So I'm trying to get those Dante cards. So I want to do Dante. I've actually looked at AVS, but I was like, yeah, all of these external sound cards and stuff, I think I better, stick with Dante. Right. So I'm waiting for those cards to be released. So to your point, I'm going to be integrating. I look to use VMix as a part of the graphics instead of all of the graphics. And then using VMix at that point to encode and maybe record, and taking some of that workload off of the layering.
Got it. Cool.
And I think that's a great way to do it. I mean, but VMix got me up and running like really quick.
Right.
And once I learned it, I can teach other people to do it, and I didn't have to rely on hardware right then and there. But it also allowed me to see the stress that, when you're doing a build. We had an event we did where we had maybe 100 different inputs, 120 different inputs, and a lot of them were builds, layers of VMix call, this graphic, that graphic, and my GPU was running at 96% for 3 hours. Wow. And that's nerve-wracking. But from what I hear from computer guys, like, GPUs are meant to run at 96% is no big deal. So I had that in the back of my mind. But you see 96%, 96% is 96%. That's just what it is. So it doesn't make me feel a whole lot better. Chris could speak to that a little bit better.
Yeah, GPUs graphically are designed to run at a 99% load over long periods of time, because GPUs weren't originally designed for what we're using them for now. They're designed for gaming and high quality graphics output of gaming. So with that, they're meant to be, you sit at a computer, who plays a game for an hour and shuts it off? Not a lot of people, I'll tell you that.
Right. That's a good point.
So, I mean, 8-hour game sessions, and they're running at 98 to 99 to 96 to 94% the entire time. Right. Over the lifetime of a GPU, it probably is clock speeding at 90% or above its entire life cycle.
Gotcha.
So
hey, now, but I'm going back to that hardware workflow slowly.
Yeah, like I said before, an all-in-one solution versus a single, multiple boxes that are designed to do one thing really well.
Yeah.
That's the reason why that's how it was in live. Now, do you see yourself bringing VMix machines on live events once a hybrid and live starts coming back?
Yes. Yes, in some capacity. I just have to make sure these guys know how to open up these things and reseat graphics cards and such. I know how to do it because I've built my own computer, serviced them for years. But as you all know, it doesn't take but a slight little bump. You can put it in a nice case. I have nice Pelican cases, it's padded very well. But but to answer your question, yes.
Okay, cool.
I'll integrate it. I'll integrate it into the workflow. But I will always have extra GPUs, graphics cards, extra machines, backup.
Right. Chris, do you want to grab a couple more? We only have about 4 or 5 minutes left. Maybe let's grab a couple.
So
quick
we'll
questions.
go with so this one's a good one that I think I find, and I know AV's over here. Omar is going crazy with questions. This is actually a good one that I think. How much more time are you and your team putting into pre-production of your show compared to before?
Oh man, yeah, it's more. I think it's more. There's so many different things.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll make this short. But I was talking to one of my guys just a few days ago. I was like, listen, you have a test call. I was on a site for an installation I was doing. I called and said, okay, test call is happening in a couple of hours. Don't wait until the client jumps on. Go ahead. You and the engineer, y'all get on the phone. Y'all make sure that the audio is working. You have the virtual patches happening. We're using WebEx instead of this. Like, go ahead and do that now. And lo and behold, I followed up with them after it was all done, and they tested it, and it was good they did because WebEx bogged the computer down. As soon as he downloaded it, had an issue. He was able to get on the phone with the tech from the organization about WebEx to start, get all that stuff worked out. But it was good because they got it all worked out 20 minutes before they had the call with the client. But that goes into preparation, and you think it's going to work. It's okay, but don't just wait. We've talked about this. Let's go ahead and open things up and see and make and confirm that things are working. So we're having to do those things and testing gear ahead of time. It's just a good best practice to do so.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot more. The days of a copy and paste job are kind of gone. Back when it was every year, oh yeah, we're going to do the same thing as last year, and it was copy paste, same gear list, same thing.
I'm guilty.
Every event is a la carte, customizable nowadays.
Very much so, especially when we start getting into hybrid. So I'm very guilty of the pull sheet, handed to the project manager. It's like, yeah, same show, it's right. A different venue. Like, how's it the same show? I've definitely been guilty of that.
Yeah, I think the last question we have for the night, I know there's a couple more that come in, so sorry we're not able to hit every single one of them, but this one I think is really important for a lot of people. How do you market yourself besides referrals for virtual events?
Jumping in and rubbing elbows with people like you guys. I think definitely jumping in on LinkedIn, updating your profile. I've heard people updating their profile to VMix Operator and getting calls from companies like LMG, just within a matter of days. But before you put it out there, you better believe, you better know what you're doing before they call you. So I would say definitely make sure if you understand what you're working with, put yourself out there, update your profiles, get into these forums, these VMix groups, these NDI groups on user groups on Facebook and such, and rub elbows. Pay attention to AV, educate, interact with guys, friend guys and find out where people are hanging out so that you can, so that you can learn and actually, show your passion and your growth in this virtual space.
That's great. Great advice. I use LinkedIn very, very much. I've made a lot of connections through LinkedIn, and during this time, I've been able to network with a lot of people who I probably wouldn't have been able to network otherwise because we're all on virtual spaces somewhere. We're in these video conferences, and and it's a great thing. So
I'm gonna
Ricardo,
have to get
I
on
want to
this
take a moment.
LinkedIn heavy.
Yeah, yeah. There's certain ways to use it too. I find we can get into that in a whole nother time, but it's just it's a great tool if you don't go in there with the approach like a used car salesman and be just constantly trying to sell yourself like, hey, hire
Yeah.
me, I know everything. You got to have some finesse with it, but it can be a very useful tool. You got to get on there, Chris.
So
Ricardo,
Absolutely.
as soon as we're done, I'm gonna send you a request. We'll link up, we'll connect.
Absolutely.
Before Ed closes out, from our leader, and I call him our leader in all faithfulness because he's done great things with the AV Educate platform. He just wants to say, I just want to add before the night is done, you're a good leader, and I would follow you any day. Is what he said.
Oh man, I appreciate it. I've been following you guys on AV Educate now for at least a few months, and it's been great. I've been jumping into the chat and engaging, and it's a great platform. And I hope that I've inspired some people out there to jump in there and just do a deep dive into learning. And the way to get in, a good way to get onto LinkedIn is learn the stuff and post what you learn. Even if it's something small, don't try to act like you're doing something bigger than what you're doing. But show people what you're doing, that you're committed to that craft, and put it out there and start engaging with people. It's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I'll say to echo that with LinkedIn. One of the things I did is I posted all of my certifications on LinkedIn. I'm E2 certified, Aquilon, Spider, Row and Absent, all these certifications. I put them on there, and it's a great place where now you don't have to tell everybody every time you have a conversation with them, oh, I'm certified on these things. Once they connect with you on LinkedIn, they're going to see all that. So
That's awesome.
it sells you for you, if you just have that information available that somebody can actually find it and your work history and all that stuff. So,
and lastly, a lot of those all of those certifications are virtual now. You couldn't do that before.
Right.
A lot of them you couldn't do. And I'm specifically thinking of it's evading me right now. But a lot of those certifications are in reach, so you can do them.
And a lot of them are offering virtual free as well. I just started my Dante certification. I just did the first one, and I'm going to do the last two this week. So
yeah, Dante's been free for a while, but yes, and I mean, I started when it wasn't free, so no, that's a great thing. And Chris, you're gonna nail that. There's a huge jump in learning curve between 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So you won't have any problem with it. But anybody else who tries it 1 and 2, you're gonna be like, oh, this is great. Let me try 3. 3 is a little more challenging. But Ricardo, thank you so much for everything. Just in summary, I mean, everything you had to do to transition, that you took your team with you, that you spend time training people, you're investing your knowledge in other people so that they can perform for you. And I think that's great. That saying, the craft, the client, and the colleague, like I said, I jotted that down. That's coming with me now.
That's definitely powerful.
I'll credit you whenever I mention it, but that's now part of my my mantra here. It's all great stuff. And everybody out there, you can visit Ricardo's company, techfactoryproductions.com. I just posted that in the chat, so check them out if you need some help with virtual events. I'm sure Ricardo will be willing to help you out, give you a great price. He's got so many VMix machines that he'll be able to handle whatever you can throw at him.
Yeah, I need to work those machines.
Yeah. Hey, if you're churning them out that quick, yeah, that's great, man. I mean, it sounds. You probably weren't here. I don't know if it was last week or a couple weeks ago. I was on this, and I use the phrase constantly: "Buy once, cry once." Where when you need something, you buy it, you pay for it, cry about it, get over it, because then you don't have to buy it. I heard that.
That's the first time I'd heard that.
Yeah. So I mean, as you were talking, I was like, oh man, me and Ricardo are right on the same wavelength with how gear purchases should go. So I'm right there with you, man. I'm ready to connect with you on LinkedIn. Let's start doing some remote work, man. I'm all for it.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you very much, Ricardo. If you have any last words, please tell our audience some nugget, and then Chris, you can close us out.
Yeah, I think I'll just sum it up by saying, just what I've been talking about. Just respect you respect that craft, and study. And you have time, a lot of free resources. Get these certifications under your belt. I started working on some I actually did a virtual certification course and didn't take the test because I didn't have time. But doing 70 events is a bit of a certification of itself. But get those certifications while they're available to you right now, and you won't regret it.
All right. Well, Ricardo, thank you. Ed, thank you for your time today. I know this isn't typically the normal crew you see. So thanks for taking the time and doing this today. Ricardo, thank you for taking your time and coming on today. Facebook Land, AB Educate World, thank you for allowing us to keep bringing you as much information as we possibly can. If it wasn't for you guys wanting the knowledge that we're providing, we wouldn't have a platform to do it on. So I just want to thank you guys for that. And with that, we're going to say goodnight, and I'm going to close out with the logo sponsor animation. Good night, Facebook.